Okay, chapter 1, the agitation. I hope that you guys have already pressed through these pages because I want to take you sort of through a unique angle of how and why God began to even click the pieces, the bigger picture that frameworks really the whole book in my heart. As you know, I was at a place of agitation in my own faith. I was at a place of burnout. I was tired. I was doing so much good things, doing a lot for the Lord in the name of the Lord. But when I came up for air, I realized I felt so far from the Lord. It's like I was pouring out, but I felt a million miles away from his heart. And that was really hard. And I think it's a place that we're not always adequately discipled, or that's not always spoken into when the believer feels like, what am I missing? There has got to be more. I am empty. It's not great. But the beauty is that there are points in our faith. There are mile markers, I guess you could say. I likened it in the book, to spiritual puberty, to the tension, the angst of coming into new feelings, wrestling with new things that seems really disconcerting. We'd probably like to run from it. But the beauty is that it's actually indicative of a leap of maturity, these tension points. And what he'll do is he'll take the very things that cause us tension or angst, and as he always does in his kingdom way, he flips them upside down for his glory. So for me, that was the scripture of Matthew 7 that I didn't understand, that almost seemed terrifying, yet he illuminated that word new, the Hebrew meaning of yada. He brought it into context with physical intimacy. And I'll be honest, for 2 years at that point, I had been sharing about sex, Jesus, and the Conversations the Church Forgot, speaking into sexual healing and wholeness, God's design for right-natured sexual intimacy. So though it might have seemed disconcerting when you read, wait, yada intimacy is the term used for sexual intimacy, for me, it was like the key. It was the glue. Suddenly, all that I had been pressing into began to become illuminated when it came to understanding the fullness of the gospel and the fullness of navigating right-natured intimacy with him. So he takes the things that the wise would probably find foolish, and by his Spirit, he uses them for his glory. And that's what he did with introducing even the thought of relational intimacy with man, relating to better understanding spiritual intimacy with him. And I hope that clicked as you read this chapter, that it was a collision of things that didn't seem to make sense, but somehow came together in a perfect puzzle piece. Now, I'll tell you what comes with the agitation, what comes with some of these spiritual mile markers, I guess, this spiritual puberty, it feels like, is challenge, is a deconstruction in a sense, and the need for you to press into that discomfort and that angst and allow him to bring you down to a solid foundation and rebuild what he intends on that. And that takes a lot of self-assessment. That takes a lot of stepping back and realizing, wait, maybe I have something to learn here. Maybe I don't have it all figured out. What it really takes is humility. But there's beauty. The word says, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up. In that chair that night, I was at the ultimate place of humbled brokenness, really. And that was where, as I just came before his throne, it was like he lifted my chin and raised me up and said, by my Spirit, I want to breathe new life into you and help things make sense. Don't run from the angst and the tension. Draw near to me and I will draw near to you. And that is the very place I believe God desires you find yourself in this hour. So I want to pose a couple questions for you to either be thinking through on your own, or if you're doing a Bible study, if you're partnered up with a friend studying through this, to talk about. In honest self-assessment, how would you gauge your present connectedness to God? Maybe scale of 1 to 10 it, or just in an honest self-reflection, how would you gauge how near you feel, how connected you feel to Him? When you think of relational intimacy, what initial thoughts and feelings are stirred in you? This is a very honest question, because the word intimacy, when it butts up against God, for many of us, due to our life experiences or whatever it may be, that can feel really uncomfortable. So when you think of intimacy, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? How do you typically respond to being challenged and stretched in your faith journey? That's kind of an honest self-assessment question too. But how do you respond when those tensions arise, when that angst is there, and when He's really stirring something that He wants you to press into and investigate? Are you willing to forfeit your comfort to know concrete truth? Or does the process scare you some? That's okay. What He desires is our heart, and our honest heart. So I'd like you to begin this book with an honest self-assessment of, how does this even begin to make me feel? Now let's move on to chapter 2.